Hey guys, what's up? It's Vince here. We're back after a couple of days off. Today we're going to be discussing the tier changes for the month of July. Now, unlike some prior months this generation, especially after releases and getting new Pokemon out and about, we're seeing a bit more conservative drops and rises this time around. Tiers have stabilized. What's being used and what's good is more or less predetermined. However, there are some changes in terms of trends reacting to what's good perhaps, or trends noticing something maybe not is as good as initially intended. Therefore, we're still going to see some rises and even some drops on top of that, shifting the metagames and potentially creating whole new waves of trends, effectiveness, etc. in the OU, UU, RU, NU, PU, and even ZU metagames. We're going to be discussing all of that and more in this video about the tier changes for the month of July. It's been a couple months, I believe it's been since April, and we got to this point, so I hope you guys have enjoyed the last 3 months of playing. Let me know what your favorite tier has been over the last 3 months down below in the comments, and what your favorite Pokemon using that tier is. Alrighty, now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's go ahead and discuss the rises and drops in these metagames. First and foremost, there are some formalities, if you will, Pokemon that haven't been usable in the lower tier below due to being banned in the BL tier. So for example, Weavile was in UUBL, it rose to OU. That just means it was too good for UU as is, but OU usage more or less reaffirmed that notion. The same goes for Slowbro Galar, Thundurus Incarnate, and Zygarde 10% in the underused metagame. They were all RU BL, but now they're all UU, and Poltergeist in the RU metagame, meaning it's already, banned from NU just being so potent offensively as a Shell Smasher, but now RU took it V usage anyway, so it makes that kind of being banned moot for the time being. But if any of these Pokemon were to fall out of favor, let's say Weavile saw no usage in OU for the next 3 months, it would go back to UUBL, and UU would have to specifically retest it for it to be reallowed, unless a generation were to change with a new release or something like that. Then they might just automatically let it down. But given that that's not happening for at least until later this year, that's not the case here. So Weavile is OU by usage, and if we're to drop down in the next cycle, then it would still be UUBL, so it wouldn't be usable in UU. Make sense? Alrighty, so yeah, those are the Pokemon kind of formalities there. Nothing super important there. Let's talk about the Pokemon that actually rose up in tiers. UU losing 2 Pokemon that were within the top 10 of their usage statistics. An absolutely massive shakeup, especially when it comes to Scizor. The Bullet Puncher, everyone's favorite pivot, one of the premier steel types of any lower tier ever, going back to last generation, with Scizor's absolute reign of dominance in UU has come to an end due to its prevalence in the OU metagame, matching up well against Pokemon like, for example, Tapu Lele and Kyurem, and also grass types like Kartan and Rillaboom, gives Scizor a ton of viability in the OU metagame as a pivot, as a potential bulkier win condition, as a utility option, and as a primary steel type, with access to options like Knockoff, Defog, and U-Turn. It all provides some semblance of utility or momentum, coupled with the access to priority Bullet Punch with Stab and Technician Boost, Swords Dance, and even things that you don't really expect a ton on it. For example, you could run offensive Life Orb set with Psycho Cut, or Dual Wing Beat, or Superpower, and they could really open up a ton of breaking options. All in all, Scizor is a Pokemon that, while perhaps not the best steel type in OU, a metagame that has things like Heatran and Corviknight, is absolutely worth using on some teams. It provides a unique defensive outlook, coupled with a very, very impressive offensive presence when needed. Scizor's viability in OU largely is a reactionary measure to things like Kyurem and Tapu Lele picking up in usage after the bans of Magearna and Cinderace months ago, just showing how the metagame still continues to evolve given the past bans and tiering history of the metagame, which in my opinion is a sign of a metagame that is continuing to grow, and probably a healthier thing than not, seeing these Pokemon rise up. Almost wish it was more, in all honesty. Speaking of other risers, we're seeing Mew. Mew is another more of a homegrown development in the OU metagame. Nothing crazy happened, nothing really prompted it. You could argue that it's a good reactionary measure to things like Nidoking, which were pretty popular before, and that is true, it does well against Nidoking, but all in all, Mew's prevalence is due to the fact that it has such a wide array of options. You've seen a lot of sets with Spikes, Knockoff, Will-O-Wisp, and Softball lately on more balanced teams, functioning super well on those. You've also seen Demon Mew, as some people call it, with the Stored Power, or Calm Mind plus Iron Defense type of sets. You run Body Press plus Cosmic Power plus Stored Power type of sets, Weakness Policy, or Leftovers, or even run it with Misty Train so you don't get toxic. There are a ton of different options there. Of course, it's going to take multiple setup turns to do enough damage, and you're susceptible to status, this, that, and other thing, Trick, Encore, Taunting, I get it, but all in all, Mew is an underrated option right now. It's not the most consistent option offensively or as a win condition. There's just no one set that could truly do it all. It wishes it had 5 or 6 moves because it could use so many different things. That is for sure. But when it comes to Mew, unfortunately, it is still limited. And because of that, it's not going to really thrive in OU. It's never going to be a top 10 Pokemon this generation. But it did see enough usage to crack OU, rising out of UU despite being one of the better Pokemon there. I believe it was top 10 in usage, and that's pretty impressive. But needless to say, we're at a point in time where Mew has risen to OU, and it's now finding a nice niche there, so it's pretty impressive. Speaking of some other risers, RU BL lost Slowbro Galar, Thunderous Therian, and Zygarde 10%. That is worth noting because all those Pokemon are picking up the slack in the underused metagame. But there are also some Pokemon that rose to UU from RU that were usable in the RU metagame. Those Pokemon are going to be Rhyperior and Zarude. 2 Pokemon that were, well, especially in Zarude's case, quite good in that RU metagame. Now, as for Zarude, it was one of the best pivots with heavy-duty boots. It also had options like Running Choice Band or even Choice Scarf. Although you mainly saw the boots pivot set with 3 attacks plus jungle healing. There are options, of course. So, I think that what made Zarude so good in RU actually was just its sheer offensive presence coupled with its natural bulk. In that it wasn't really super broken offensively or anything like crazy like that in RU. But it has options like Power Whip and Darkest Lariat, coupled with U-Turn. You can run Close Combat for Steel types. You could run Iron Tail for Togekiss if you so please. And these options, they really made it hard to keep in check in the long term. It kind of wore you out with Heavy Duty Boost plus Jungle Healing. You're switching to Scalds and Toxics and weaker attacks pretty often as long as it avoided U-Turns. And that same role arguably enacted itself in UU a little bit. Admittedly, I'm not familiar. I also know some people have considered running the bulk upset there, but it kind of got stuffed by things like U-Turn Scizor, which, again, not shocking. We are going to go into the usage stats of that tier later on. Also, I believe Buzzwole was UU, so that kind of limited it. But truth be told, Zarude was still viable enough to where it went over that threshold. Seeing, I think, 5 or 6% usage these months, don't quote me on that, but all in all, Zarude was kind of just good enough. It didn't really take the metagame by storm per se, but it was solid. As you see in this tab, which we'll get to in a minute, it didn't come close to cracking the top 10 of users. Yeah, they also have Como. Oh, I forgot about that. But yeah, the point is, Zarude, good in UU, but not great, but good enough to rise. Rhyperior, a bit different. Rhyperior, with the ground plus rock typing, actually had a ton of practical applications, especially with the prevalence of some certain electric types, and the great massive physical bulk, letting it even take on things like super effective bullet punches from Scizor, and whatever the tier related to throw at it. All in all, I definitely think Rhyperior is great, be it a stealth rock setter or as an offensive presence or whatever it may be. I'm a little surprised that it rose here, honestly. I wasn't like expecting it to rise. I saw it here and there, but maybe it was a bit more of a ladder trendy phase toward the end of the laddering stage, if you will. But regardless of that, I'm expecting Rhyperior to probably drop down to RU again at some point. I don't think it'll be a crypt drop, but I imagine it happening. Admittedly, I'm not an expert on this regard, but I feel as if Rhyperior is more of an RU Pokemon this generation, and it's pretty solid there, and I'm sure it can be solid enough in UU. It just feels like there's a lot of stiff competition. There's a plethora of ground types, so many different stealth rock setters, so many different breakers. You kind of have to check all the boxes and find yourself a distinct niche, and when it comes to Rhyperior, it can work on some teams, but definitely not all of them, so have to be careful about that. Moving forward, though, we also have some other Pokemon that are moving on up in the world. That's right, some other Pokemon surpassed that 4.52% usage threshold in the tier above. Most notably is going to be Flygon, moving from NU to RU. Flygon was arguably the face of the NU metagame, keeping the tier intact, providing a Volt Switch immunity, a potential Revenge Killer, or a Defogger, if you will, depending on your team. Also checking things like Salazzle. All in all, it was a menace to deal with. Flygon was all over the place. You couldn't go more than a couple games without seeing a Flygon, if not using one on your own team because it's just that good. All in all, losing Flygon is a humongous shift for NU, arguably on par with losing Scizor in UU. That is just such a drastic departure that we're not really used to seeing, in all honesty. And, I really love how metagames are kind of forced to adapt like this. It kind of throws some spice in the mix, if you will. And you don't see that every day. So, hey, I'm excited to see how you react. I definitely think we're going to see a lot more Rotom-Mow, which is already a really great Pokemon because you can just spam Volt Switch all day. Salazzle is going to be even better and better, which is likely going to prompt Dragology between Rotom-Mow and Dragology slots being checked. I think we're going to see lots of Dragology, so that's going to be interesting there. Because that might, prompt more usage of steel types like Perja and Bronzong. And that's pretty cool too. Different ground types that react to them. And we kind of got a whole chain of events there. Overall, we're not going to speculate a ton about specifics in NU in this video. If you want to see more NU content, let me know down below in the comments. But I'm very interested to see that metagame. I made a post on it the other day. And NU is here I hold near and dear. So, needless to say, it's cool. Are you getting Politoed? Politoed's really only niche anywhere is Rain. So, I guess there's that. Speaking of other Pokemon moving up, we have Guzzlord, Heliolisk, Toxric, and Xatu all rising from PU to NU. Unsurprisingly, Guzzlord has been a behemoth offensively in the NU metagame for a number of months, and it's finally seeing the usage it very much deserves. Heliolisk, on the other hand, more of a recent development, shifting around as a good pivot offensively, be it heavy duty booster choice specs. It offers a lot of coverage on the offensive end of the spectrum while also dealing off a premium amount of damage. The defensive presence isn't great. The water immunity, the ghost immunity, they help, but it can only mean so much. All in all, Heliolisk is good. Definitely very good Pokemon, but not great. Curious to see where it goes. Toxicroak, a Pokemon that's been previously deemed broken, ban-worthy in the NU metagame. Actually followed it on the PU this time around, but now it's returning to form. The Swords Dance sets are pretty strong. Low kick doing a million to things like Mudsdale as well. Always interesting to see. All in all, Toxicroak, not amazing, not broken, but very good. And Xatu is back in business, bouncing back the hazards. Got rocks? No, I got him. Got spikes? No, I got him. Xatu, the ultimate defensive pivot when trying to gain a positional advantage. Speaking of hazards, NU is also going to gain Garbodor from ZU. And let's talk about these tiers, like PU and ZU losing these Pokemon. All of a sudden, you're seeing some of the faces of your offensive metagame. Things like Guzzlord, Heliolisk, and Toxric. Pokemon that undoubtedly stood out to an extent in a PU metagame that is perhaps a bit left out of the loop here due to the fact that they're losing these kind of big three. And it's like, damn, what am I going to do now? It definitely kind of cycles how they're going to have to play the game and how they approach it. Xatu being lost and Garbodor being lost, it changes the whole hazard metagame and defensive metagame as well. There's a lot of shifts going on, so it's going to be interesting to see those tiers. Admittedly, I'm not as familiar with ZU, so Frostlass and Sandslash and Silvally, presumably Poison or Fairy rising up. It does, or Ghost doesn't really mean anything to me. I'm sorry, I don't know ZU very well. I hardly know PU in all honesty, so not going to speculate on what that metagame lost, but I will say that it shows that PU is definitely a hazard heavy metagame. That's two spikers rising up. Sandslash does get spikes this generation. Of course, Frostlass historically good spikers. So that's pretty interesting there. Yeah, now let's talk about some Pokemon that did not hit the aforementioned 4.52 threshold. Pokemon that just were not quite good enough to see the usage needed to stay in the tier that they resided in initially. For OU, they're going to be losing Nidoking, Pelipper, and Regieleki. Those are three big droppers. As for Regieleki, it's probably the least controversial of the three in all honesty. With ground types like the aforementioned Nidoking and various others, just electric immunities in general, Regieleki is just not deemed a sufficient option in OU, and honestly, it's going to be more than enough to be balanced in UU as well. It's a one-trick horse, and its trick is just not often effective enough, unfortunately. Pelipper is the bird that is going to cause a lot of the worries for the UU metagame. It's a Pokemon that can summon a Drizzle upon entry and then wreak havoc with its teammates, be it Choice Specs Pelipper, just completely destroying things alone, or supporting teammates like Keldeo and Azumarill that could be seen accompanying it on Rain teams in the unused metagame. It'll be interesting to see what happened with Drizzle and Rain in that metagame. Nidoking is a Pokemon that is very strong, and for UU standards, it's going to be especially good. UU lost Slowking a cycle ago. Now it's losing Mew, two Pokemon that probably would do pretty well against it. Unfortunately, no longer reside in the metagame, making it so that things like Chansey are really the only reliable checks anymore. And you kind of see, like, damn, is that okay? I don't know. I guess we'll find out if Nidoking is up to the task or if it's just too prediction reliant and too limited in a more proactive UU metagame. Speaking of other drops, Ninetales Alola was not good enough to save itself in UU as RU gets back Ninetales Alola. Of course, with likely being banned, that's not too surprising. I wonder if it'll ever see a comeback, but definitely right now, not a hot Pokemon to pick. PU is going to gain Quagsire all the way from the realm of UU, which also means that NU has another stall option if someone want to go that way. Unaware, it can be very valuable on stall teams, opens up the door for a ton of different possibilities, so be curious to see how that goes. Finally, PU and ZU getting some hail threats. We're seeing some ice threats, in all honesty. We're seeing Arctozolt, Arctovish, and Sandslash Alola all dropping, while Articuno's not normal form, but Galarian form is also dropping as well. Overall, just the demise of ice types. Ice types did not see good months besides Weavile. Pretty crazy. Weavile rose in OU, but Frostlass Rose all the way down there too. Meanwhile, we're seeing Ninetales Alola and Arctazol, Arctivish, and Sandslash Lola all fall down here. So it's pretty tough. I don't think they were huge movers in those metagames. I know Arctazol in particular just wasn't really great in the tier it resided in. So seeing it PU where it belongs might be better for it. As for Arctivish, I'm a little surprised at seeing it bottoming out in PZU in all honesty. Seemed like a strong option, but hey, it might be support line. It definitely isn't the strongest one ever facing something that'll take a Fishious Rend, and that alone is, kind of a limiting factor for it, unfortunately. Anyway, 1 second, guys. Let me go ahead and pause here. Alrighty, we're back. 1, 2, 3. We're back. I think we're back. I'm hoping we're back. Can you guys hear me? I'm back. Alright, we're back in business. Sorry about that. So, there was also a nice graphic, again, made by the Smogon social media team. Big shout out to them. Discussing the top 10 Pokemon usage for the month of June, just to go over some more recenter trends, if you will. Unfortunately, I don't have much to say on Ubers. In fact, if you guys know Ubers, comment down below. What was your biggest surprise and what was your, biggest, I told you so moment about those usage statistics. I'm seeing, Yveltal, Necrozma, Calyrex, Eternatus, a lot of newer Pokemon from last couple generations, like Xerneas even, Marshadow, doing very well. Whereas, old goats like Kyogre and Groudon find their way into the mixes too, as well. What's the big surprise? What's the big movers? Let me know. I'm really curious to hear about that. But as for you, RU, NU, I guess PU as well. I can't really comment on ZU. But let's talk about this. So, UU, it lost number 1 and number 9, and that's pretty crazy. Crocodile and Salamence are really taking over the tier in my eyes. It's like the potential number 1 now. Salamence in general provides a great deal of defensive utility, but also has a nice set mix with some decent offensive options mixed in. Crocodile, on the other hand, it gives you that electric immunity. It's a great stealth rocker. It's a ghost resist. It kind of compresses some nice rolls, especially when paired with Intimidate. It could go offensive. It could go stealth rock. Whatever you see out of it, it can do and will do pretty effectively as well. Aegislash being a new use still makes me feel weird, but hey, it's the steel type that the tier very, very, very much needs, especially with the uptick in scissor usage and the general passivity of some Jirachi steps. Jirachi, a Pokemon that was previously banned in an unused metagame now, it is still clinging on to top 10 usage in the tier, but it's nowhere near as broken as it once was, and truth be told, I struggle to really find a consistent way to utilize it myself. Maybe that's due to my own inexperience in the metagame, or maybe there are other reasons as well, I'm not too sure, but regardless, it's in the mix too. Then some offensive firepower, electric types such as Thunderous Tea and Rotom Heat, the Overheater, also making its way into the list, while Lycanroc Dusk, another Glass Cannon-ish Pokemon with a lot less bulk than the aforementioned ones that are more bulky offensive presences, is finally rounding at the top 10. After seeing barely, around 10% usage for a while now, a couple months I believe, 14.61% usage, that's a clear uptick in viability for Lycanroc Dusk. Interesting to see how that'll go. Unsurprising considering how effective it was in the DLC 1 metagame. Maybe that's the case here as well. We'll have to wait and see. So if you're a Lycanroc fan, cross your fingers and hope that's the case. If not, well, we'll see. As for RU defined unsurprisingly by a lot of pivots. Zarude, Mienshao, Circuitry, so Pokemon that really opened the door. Momentum, bulky offense. These type of teams dominate the RU metagame. They thrive as it is, especially when coupled with things like Togekiss, which provides a great deal of utility, and a premier typing, unexpected coverage, a lot of different things Togekiss can do. While it is going to struggle with electric types like Xurkitree and Raikou, admittedly, which both do, by the way, climb their way into the top 10 here. It's still a lot that Togekiss can do, and I'm curious to see how that'll go in the metagame. We already discussed kind of the big three, the pivoters, Zarude, Mienshao, Xurkitree. They all offer a unique and potent offensive presence in the metagame. But then you go down the list, you see more, of a mix. You Crobat, more of a, utility Pokemon. You don't want to see a ton for using like fully offensive teams because it's so fast and it can do some damage. Weezing Galar and Milotic, more defensively oriented presences. Interesting to see how that'll hang up. I'm always glad to see Weezing Galar getting usage. Even if it's not an OU like it used to be, that's still pretty cool. Firmly seeing our usage at number 6. So yeah, got big on that. Nice to see Raikou as well. Again, another electric type. Stops Togekiss, pretty cool. And also has a nice speed tier, which can come in handy. As for NU, we see Flygon barely shy of 10% ahead of number 2 Bronzong, which is crazy considering it rose up to RU. So everyone in RU and NU is just using Flygon, and unfortunately RU took away from NU. So it'll be interesting to see how that metagame adapts, especially with no Salazzle in the top 10, no Dragalge in the top 10. Those both are going to find their way back in there for sure. Rotom might honestly overtake Bronzong in the interim, especially if Caparajah catches up to Bronzong as well. I think we're going to see some movers there for sure. But some Pokemon are still naturally solid. The evolutions, Vaporeon and Sylveon, are premier Wish Pastures team supporters, even offer a less passive presence than one would imagine. Talonflame is also a great utility option, be it U-Turn, Will-O-Wisp, you name it. Talonflame offers a ton to teams. Of course, it's going to struggle with things that can do it super effectively, like the aforementioned Vaporeon or Diancie, which also finds its way into the top 10. But if you can play it right, you can get a ton of mileage out of it, especially if you don't like it take a stray knock. And finally, speaking of fire types, Arcanine also rounds out the top 10 in NU, which I believe is one of the first times we've seen it up here. Pretty cool to see. Not a ton of Dark types, so seeing a couple of them represented from a single tier, pretty amusing in my eyes. And last, but certainly not least, the PU metagame. When it comes to PU, I'm not super familiar, but I see a lot of Saiyan teams like Gigalith being there. It's unsurprising. Passimian's kind of the king of balanced bulky offense, revenge killing, and just fitting onto teams as a Scarfer. Overall, that's great too. And of course, Charizard being the top dog, or rather top bird, or rather top dragon, I'm not sure you'd say it, is a really impressive and promising facet of his viability in there as well. I mean, it can do a lot of things. Offensive sets, I've even seen specs, not only in PU, but also in NU, although I think Boots is better myself. But also it can run defensive, utility-oriented sets as well, which is pretty well. We're also seeing a couple steel types in PU, which is interesting to see. They've kind of fallen down there. Savalas, Steel, and Togedemaru. We'll be interesting to see how that holds up. I imagine given the slew of resistances that they provide, PU will be looking for some sort of long-term steel types. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see there. And finally, Mesprit, Sandaconda, Aromatisse. So yeah, no, 3 pretty solid Pokemon, 2 potential rockers, potential Wisher. You know, Mesprit can do a plethora of things there, so it'll be interesting to see how that functions as well. ZU, I don't have any comments on it. I'm not familiar with the metagame. What do you think of ZU? Do you think this is, you know, an accurate representation of the metagame? Why or why not? Let me know down below. But yeah, these are my very, very rough thoughts on the metagame right now. It's 12:36 a.m. on Saturday morning, so I'm going to go ahead and get to sleep now, but expect a video on OU usage statistics at some point. Expect some official ladder, tournament laddering, etc. A lot of fun coming, so stay tuned. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you all have a great day. Happy 4th of July to my Americans. Have a great weekend all over the world, no matter where you guys are at. I know a lot of you guys are watching up in Canada or over across the pond in Europe. I really do wholeheartedly appreciate each and every one of you supporting me here, and thank you so much. Okay, guys, bye. Have a great day. Like, comment, and subscribe. Later.